I'm Julia Johnson, and I'll introduce two none left. Okay, there we go. And I will introduce our camera person, Sean Martell, who's the president of our chapter. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan public policy organization that educates, advocates, and engages with the community on important issues to encourage informed civic participation. Tonight, we welcome Dr. Abbey Tyrna, Executive Director of Suncoast Waterkeeper. Abby grew up in Cape Coral and focused her education on learning about wetlands and protecting Florida waters. She earned a bachelor's in environmental studies from Florida State University and a master's in environmental science from LSU, concentrating on wetland science and management. Abby has a doctorate in geography from Pennsylvania State University, where her research focused on measuring the effects of development on wetlands. Before joining Suncoast Waterkeeper, she worked with Sarasota County government and the University of Florida to help bring scientific knowledge and expertise to the public as the water resources agent for IFAS Extension and Sustainability. Now an experienced educator and scientist, Abby joined Suncoast Waterkeeper in 2022. Welcome, Dr.
Thank you, thanks for having me. So I'm Abby and I'm with Suncoast Waterkeeper. How many of you have heard of Suncoast Waterkeeper before? All right, so that's just a few. Well, great. So we are a small but mighty nonprofit working to protect our local waters. And we actually, am I sounding okay?
Yes.
Is it like,
yes.
Okay, great. We just hired a fourth person. So I was the first full-time person hired in 2022. I just celebrated my 3-year anniversary. And then I hired a communications person shortly thereafter, 1 year later. And then in September, I got to hire I don't know what that, it might be my name tag. Oh, okay. Then after, I got to hire a water quality specialist in September who started, and she just really enhanced our water quality program and made us able to respond immediately after the hurricanes of 2024. And now I'm about to hire a fourth person who is going to extend our
Uh-oh.
See, I knew that was not good. I got nothing. You guys, I knew something was happening. It was so scary. I'm not usually nervous, but I was like, there's something happening.
Are there any electronics?
No, I got nothing except for this clicker.
The clickers? No.
You want to just don't get too
Was it my super awesome wood earrings? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna try like this and not get close. Hopefully that explosion won't happen again.
Get a little closer.
No. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. How about that?
Yes. That actually sounds better.
Oh, I'm real scared. So anyway, that's loud. So we just about to hire a fourth person. She starts June 2nd, and she's extending our range of water quality monitoring down here. So that's what the exciting news is. I could have started with that. She's gonna be monitoring water quality down here. So at some point, I'm gonna ask you about sites where people recreate on the bay, but there is no water quality monitoring being done to let you know whether or not it's safe to like be in there fishing and swimming. All right, so I'm going to talk to you today about all those things. So water quality, basically 3 central ways that you can get involved. But first, I want to share with you our mission. Oh yeah, I was going to introduce myself, but you already got that. So the longer mission is to protect and preserve our local waters for the benefit of all. And we do that using 4 main ways. So the first way is through, and I might not be going in order up there, It's environmental monitoring. So we do our fecal indicator bacteria monitoring, we do nitrogen hotspot monitoring, because you know if we put a lot of nitrogen in our water, what happens? You got it. So not just red tide though, harmful algal blooms, which are a bummer across all genre, right? So we also do harmful algal bloom monitoring, which we are going to start in probably this summer, but really blue-green algae starts to take off in like now. Like, does any of you live around stormwater ponds? Live around a lake?
Yeah.
Okay, those lakes are really stormwater ponds. I'm sorry to break it to you. There are no like naturally occurring lakes in Sarasota County. There's just like maybe 5, and I bet you don't live around one down here. So they're mostly stormwater ponds. And about this time when it's dry and there's lots of pollen, you get lots of harmful algal blooms. So your lake might start turning a blue-green. And that's not good for you to be breathing in. And it's not good water quality for wildlife either. So what's causing that is usually phosphorus, too much phosphorus. We have lots of naturally occurring phosphorus, but then you add any kind of fertilizer, reclaimed water, and we can explode that amount of phosphorus and create these blue-green algal blooms. So we're going to start focusing our monitoring on that too. So it's fecal indicator bacteria, nitrogen hotspots, harmful algal blooms, and we're about to start monitoring PFAS in Northport, which I'll talk more about in just a minute. And then lastly, we monitor mangrove health. We have started doing that in Manatee County. We have not gotten past Manatee County because Manatee County doesn't have its own protection program like Sarasota County does. So we do environmental monitoring. Then we also do advocacy, which I'm going to talk to you about today. We advocate for clean water at local government. We are a hyper-local organization that talks at our county commission, our city commission, and within our watershed, which is Manatee River down to Lemon Bay. And then we don't just advocate, we also do community engagement, like what I'm doing here. I'm engaging with you, the community, but we also have school programs. And just Saturday, we took a bunch of youth out on the boat to do the seagrass survey. So we also monitor for seagrass. So we do a lot of environmental monitoring, we do advocacy, and we also do community engagement. And lastly, when all else fails, we take responsible legal action. So that's kind of what got the organization started, was this responsible legal action. You might have been aware that Sarasota County was discharging upwards of 600 million gallons of treated or semi-treated wastewater into Philippi Creek, and it was making its way out into Sarasota Bay. Well, when I show you the seagrass results from 2024, one of the things that the director of the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program says, the recovery percentage in Sarasota Bay has been so high because of the reduction of nutrients from that wastewater overflow, which we ended up taking Sarasota County to federal court under the Clean Water Act to make sure that they abide by their permit in the law, which is you're not allowed to discharge wastewater into surface waters of the United States, which they were doing. So from that, they've actually been a really great partner in increasing the level of service to advanced wastewater treatment. So soon, Bee Ridge will have an advanced wastewater treatment wastewater system in place, and Venice will get one too, and so will Central Sarasota. So that's going to be something else that I talk about in just a minute. So our mission is large. We have a lot to do in order to keep our waters clean. We do environmental monitoring, we advocate, we do community engagement, and when all else fails, we do responsible legal action. So I'm going to provide you with a water quality update. So you'll see our 2024 report card up there, and what you'll notice is that our most southern site is actually Sarasota Bay in Sarasota. So it's at the Bay. I have to do quotations because like the whole thing's the Bay, right? But the Bay Park, the new park in Sarasota, that's our most southern site. But because we are hiring somebody who's starting June 2nd, our southern site is going to be as south as Lemon Bay, and that's where I'm going to ask for your help. But what we do is each week we go out, and I used to, but but now I have Pia, who goes out each week and collects a water sample in the bay waters where people like to recreate. So we have criteria to pick a spot. That's where people are either fishing or swimming or paddling. We want to make sure that those waters are clean, and then also where the Department of Health is not doing the water quality monitoring. So if you've ever gone to the Healthy Beaches program, that's the Department of Health monitoring of the beaches. If you are not planning to go to a beach and you're recreating in the bay, that would be us. The Department of Health does really they don't monitor any bay areas, they really monitor the beaches because they have limited resources, and that's where they choose to put the resources, which makes sense because there's a lot more beach visitors than there are bay visitors. And so we fill in the gap by monitoring those bay waters where people like to recreate. Well, what we found over 2024 is that there's a clear signal, and it's going to come to no surprise that in the rainy season we have a lot worse water quality than in the dry season. But what we can figure out is in the dry season, when we have poor water quality, we're recognizing that the sources are different, and so we can try to figure out what are the sources of this bacteria that really comes from the guts of warm-blooded mammals, but also birds. Where is it coming from, and what is the source of this poor water quality? So we use NRCOXI, which is what the Department of Health uses, and also what Florida Department of Environmental Protection uses as an indicator of whether or not there's fecal contamination. And while it started to be for human fecal contamination, what we're learning is that it can be from fecal contamination of just about any mammal and bird. So, for instance, Palmasola has a healthy population of horses that people can rent a horse and do like this horseback riding on Palmasola. Has anyone ever seen that off the causeway there? All right, so some people. Well, when we do our indicator testing, we see lots of fecal bacteria. And so when we think, okay, well, it's not raining, so nothing's coming in from pipes, so what could be the source? Well, could be horses, but it wasn't enough to just say and take pictures of the horse poop. We actually had to do some microbial source tracking. So they look at DNA of a water sample and they say what DNA has been sequenced in that water sample. And guess what we found at Palmasola? Guess whose DNA was there? It was horses. It was such a surprise. We were like, whoa, now do you guys believe us? So actually, no, they don't. So we had to go back out, and what they want to know is what percentage of all the bad bacteria that's going into Palmasola is attributed to the horses. Which is a real interesting question that we're trying to figure out how to answer, because I don't think the technology is there for it. We followed a protocol that doesn't seem to be giving us the answer. In the end, I feel like I should just pick up a jar of poopy water and just give it to our local city commissioners and be like, all right, do you really want me to DNA source track this? Like, it's obvious whose this is. So anyway, we are gonna do that in a bunch of different places because we got a generous grant from the Moat Scientific Foundation where we can do more microbial source tracking in places that are not so obvious, like Caples. New College is a partner. We work with students there, and what we found is that students swim regularly there, and there's often high levels of fecal indicator bacteria. Where is it coming from? Well, we just figured out it's birds. So bird poop is harmful to swim in, but it's not as harmful as human fecal matter. So understanding when the birds are around to kind of stay out of the water for a little bit, and then find it safe to go in when it's not raining and there's not a bunch of birds. So figuring that out for the students is going to be key, and knowing whether or not they have any adverse health impacts. So we're working on that too. So we did find some trends. Like I said, after it rains, you're going to get a flush of bad water. And actually, after Debbie, that was the best experiment yet, because Debbie brought forth so much rain and so much flooding. What we found is that it took upwards of 4 weeks for the water to clear back up after Debbie. But after Helene, it took less than a week for the water to clear back up. After Milton, again, it was like less than a week. So both Helene and Milton were not heavy rain storms, and Debbie was. So we do see that there's a strong pattern between rainfall and poor water quality as far as having fecal indicator bacteria as being your indicator of poor water quality. So we have started advising people to stay out of the water at least for 3 days after a large rain event. After that, we seem to have water clear up. So this is when you get to chime in. So we want to come down here, we want to start monitoring water quality in places where people recreate, where the Department of Health isn't doing it. Again, we follow the same procedures, we use the same indicator bacteria as the Department of Health, but we like to fill in the gap. So if you know of any place, I would like you to tell us. So there's not a QR code up there, but if you go to suncoastwaterkeeper.com and, suncoastwaterkeeper.org, you will find a way to contact us. You go directly to me. It's my phone number, it's my email. You can just tell me where you think we should recreate. You can also just raise your hand or shout it out now if you'd like. If you know of a place and you're like, yes, we need you to monitor here, let me know. So again, we tell you where it's safe to swim based on fecal indicator bacteria. You guys got nothing, huh?
It's the intercoastal.
Intercoastal, sure.
Okay.
Anything but a beach, because the Department of Health is already doing the beaches, so.
You should do around Snake Island.
Snake Island.
Snake Island, is that a heavy recreational spot?
People stop there.
Alright.
Going up and down the intercoastal.
All right, Snake Island, thank you.
What about Midnight Pass?
Hmm?
You could go all the way down to Blind Pass, Stump Pass down there.
Stump Pass.
Oh, okay, that's in Charlotte Harbor though, right?
That's in Charlotte, no, that's Charlotte.
It is Charlotte, okay.
Oh, that's Charlotte.
Yeah, that's okay. I will look at Snake Island, and that will definitely be on our places to monitor.
Do you do Midnight Pass?
We currently do not do Midnight Pass because there are a lot of researchers out there, and the pass is moving so quickly that no one's recreating so much in the pass as they are just right outside the passes. And what we find in general is that when you have such high water movement, like high flow, you have low fecal indicator bacteria. So, yeah, because it's not coming from the land. All right, so what's another indicator of water quality? Seagrass. So just recently, the Southwest Florida Water Management District, or SWIFT-MUD, put out its 2024 results. So they always put out their results 1 year after the survey, and they survey every other year. So the next results won't be until 2026, I guess. And so, or maybe later, I can't do math in front of people, it's embarrassing. But anyway, what we found is that the last time they put out a survey, they were like, everybody was worried about how the public was going to react because it was such low numbers. There was so much seagrass loss. They thought for sure there would be people up in arms. But I feel like it went off without a hitch. Like no one really even came up in arms about the loss of seagrass until manatees started dying, which I'm very sad that had to happen to make people realize that seagrass is important. But those two are interconnected, so luckily for us, definitely not luckily for the manatees, the seagrass loss and the death occurred on the East Coast. But what we're trying to tell people is that that can happen on the West Coast too if we're not paying attention to seagrass and how our seagrass is responding to water quality. So seagrass is an indicator of water quality, and what you can see is that we've had some seagrass growth. Can you see that? So on the right hand, it's gains and losses, and the greens are gains, and the reds are losses. But this is just comparing 2 years, and what's important to realize is that if you nest this 2022 into the larger framework of monitoring, 2022 was a terrible year for seagrasses, as I mentioned. So yes, we've increased since 2022, but 2022 was abysmal. So like, if we went any further down, we would start being like, oh no, sound the alarm. We're gonna have, starving manatees. So knowing that our bay is rebounding after the red tide events of 2017, 2018 is really, really great news. Knowing that our seagrass is rebounding because of shutting off the sewage to Sarasota Bay through Sarasota County's wastewater, so shutting off that valve, we can see that the seagrass is rebounding. But what we're seeing is that Blackburn Bay is not having the same story as the rest of Sarasota Bay. So what's happening in Blackburn Bay is actually lots of macroalgae growth. Not as much as Palmasola, but we already talked about Palmasola and knowing that there's a lot of horse poop, there could be a lot of macroalgae. But Blackburn Bay, you can see that in the springtime, macroalgae is being heavily present and it's increasing. So what is macroalgae? It's algae that you can see with your eye. And one thing that we've noticed in Blackburn Bay specifically is Daphis pelusa, or formerly Lingbia. Has anybody heard of Lingbia? Lingbia is a blue-green algae. It looks kind of like hairy, and when it dies, it kind of bubbles up to the surface and looks like a witch's brew. I don't know if you've seen any bubbling kind of blue-green, snotty stuff that turns brown. It smells bad, and it's actually bad for your respiratory system. It's bad for your eyes. It's bad for your skin. It's bad all around. So it is just as harmful maybe as red tide, but it's not really talked about that much because a lot of our resources and effort is going toward understanding red tide. But Daphis pelusa is something that we definitely need a better understanding of, and it's what's really impacting Blackburn Bay. It usually starts to line the shoreline around May, so at the beginning of May. So any day now we could have lots of Daphis pelusa lining the shoreline because it starts as a benthic algae or a bottom algae that attaches to seagrasses and rocks, and then as it gets bigger, it gets gas bubbles, and those gas bubbles make it rise to the surface, and then it eventually dies, and then it goes to the shore with the wind. So anyway, that's what's happening in Blackburn Bay, and what scientists are trying to figure out right now is how does macroalgae impact seagrasses? Does it, or does it not because it's so temporary? Because it is kind of like what happened, so everybody uses Indian River Lagoon, which is on the East Coast where all those manatees start. Everybody uses them as like the canary in the coal mine. What happened there, and how can we not replicate it over here? And the first thing that happened over there was an intense abundance of macroalgae. And that's why we started tracking it, and Suncoast Waterkeeper just got a grant to do even more tracking through Bloom Watch. So, if you see a harmful algal bloom, one thing you can do is just take a picture of it. And it sounds really easy, but it's a little more intense than that. We need a couple pictures, but the directions are on Bloom Watch. And so what it is a crowdsourcing program where if you see a bloom, we want to know about it, you upload it to iNaturalist. Have any of you ever used iNaturalist before? Just a few. iNaturalist is a great app. I suggest you download it now. You take a picture, you upload it to iNaturalist, it's going to ask you a few questions, you fill out those questions, and then a phycologist, so someone who studies algae, is going to ID it and let us know basically the trends of blue-green algae or the trends of any algae in our area, which is really important because no one's really been tracking the trends of algae in our area. So please get involved in Bloom Watch. And then if you have a stormwater pond with a nasty bloom, there's a guide that I worked with a phycologist that used to work at University of Florida, and we put together best management practices for what to do when your stormwater pond or your lake gets a algal bloom, because there are best management practices to keep everyone safe. All right, so we also do advocacy, and so I'm going to talk about our Voices for Water program, and this might be of most interest to you. So we advocate in Manatee and Sarasota County in the city of Sarasota. This is just for Sarasota County because that's where y'all live. So we advocate on behalf of stormwater, wastewater, and drinking water. And so first, wastewater. We have two main asks for wastewater because, like I said, we sued Sarasota County a while ago, like in 2016. They've been great partners ever since. A lot of money has gone toward the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program to do restoration projects to help bring up the bay health because of all the sewage that they put into the bay. So they've been great partners. They're gonna move to advanced wastewater treatment, which means it'll be the lowest nitrogen and phosphorus able to get out of the water before they send it out to reclaim water, because there's gonna be no surface water discharges allowed in 2026 by Florida law. So they'll be only allowed to send it out as reclaimed water and pump it deep into the ground through deep waste disposal. So our two key asks for the county are basically that there's transparency in the system. Oh no, that's stormwater, sorry, just kidding. To secure funding for more resilient wastewater infrastructure. Who remembers after Debbie how much waste went into our local waters? It was staggering, the amount of waste that went into our local waters in just a few days' time. It was hundreds of millions of gallons of sewage. And what we saw is that our wastewater treatment infrastructure is just not prepared for these big events. They're not even prepared for little events, to be quite honest. And so really what we're asking is for them to start thinking about preparedness. We talk about ways in which they can think about it because there is like a framework already put in place. In order to get FEMA funds from a disaster, there are things that they have to do. And so we're saying use this as not a copy and paste report, which is what utilities do. They just copy and paste to get, to check the box. But actually use it as a thought exercise to figure out how can we build these systems to be more resilient, be on the cutting edge. Don't just wait for someone to innovate and then you copy. The other thing that we'd like them to do is to follow through on their promise of creating an advanced wastewater treatment system here in Venice, because they said they would, but any county commission could just come in and decide, oh, we're not gonna do that. So we wanna make sure that they follow through on their promise. So how do we advocate? We tell people about these issues. We create what you see on the right there. We create these talking sheets, and we also create talking points, and we ask you to schedule one-on-one meetings with your commissioner to go over these issues, or to show up when these topics are put onto the agenda of your local meeting so that you can show up and talk about these topics. So you can go to our website, go to Voices for Water program, and you'll get all of the talking points in these leave behind sheets. So drinking water. Drinking water is not really an issue in Sarasota County, but it is an issue in the city of Northport. And so I just want to put a quick plug for our drinking water program. We just got a grant through Branson Foundation to do drinking water testing and also to give out water filters to those with economic hardship. And so what we found was that, so we partnered with a University of Florida professor, Dr. Bowden, who looked at somewhere around 900 drinking water sources throughout the state of Florida and looked for PFAS, or those forever chemicals. How many of you have heard of PFAS? It's the polyfluoroalkyl substances. Okay, great. So those are terrible things, right? It's like the Teflon on your pants, but it's also the stuff that lines your popcorn bags, or it's also what your floss is made of. So there's a lot of PFAS in things, but what we found through Dr. Bowden's research, and we contributed 14 samples to Dr. Bowden, is out of our 14 samples, which were triplicates from 4 different municipalities, and one of them was Northport, one of them was the city of Venice, one of them was the city of Sarasota, and one of them was Manatee County. And then we had 2 well water samples, one from Sarasota, like a well from just a person's home in Sarasota, and a well from a person's home in Terracea. And anyway, those triplicates of Northport ended up having the most total PFAS and the highest concentration of PFAS in our area, in our sampling, but also much higher than the state average, like much higher than the state average. And so I got the results. I emailed the mayor to let her know that these are the results, and also I collected all the water samples from athletic fields, so drinking fountains at athletic fields, to let them know, like, you know, kids who are using these fountains are getting a lot of PFAS, more PFAS than most places in the state. I didn't hear back, so I emailed her again. Still didn't hear back. That's okay, because we're going forward with our program. We'll be in the libraries in Northport to help people get their water tested and then give them filters if the results show that they need filters and they have an economic hardship and need help getting those filters to their homes. So stormwater is also an issue because, again, our hurricane season really showed that we're not prepared, and where those weaknesses are, it's a way to learn and apply lessons learned, right? Let's not just pretend that we didn't learn lessons and hard lessons during Debbie. We had learned an abundance of things, and one thing that we learned is that, like, hot spots, places that flood a lot, did you even know they existed? Many people didn't. I know somebody that just moved into their neighborhood and didn't know that their neighborhood was a hot spot for flooding until it was too late, and now they have been living in a friend's house. They rented a house as their home gets remodeled because of flooding from Debbie. So if there was transparency and there was a map that showed you where are those flooding hotspots, imagine how much more informed we'd be, so that when a storm like Debbie comes, we can then move things up. They lost stuff that they didn't need to lose, like their cars. They could have moved their cars. They could have taken things higher. They could have just been prepared, or they could have, you know, worked to sell their house and let the other people know that it's a flooding hotspot. But not just that, we shouldn't be building in floodplains anymore. I mean, I think that's just simple ideas that, like, in Penn State, in Pennsylvania, they haven't allowed building in floodplains in, like, since the 80s. But yet, we continue to do that here. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So, stopping that would be great. And that's our second ask. Maybe our third ask. Oh, they all say number one. I did a great job on this slide. And then, we probably heard, I don't know, I think you had Steve Swaw here maybe, the engineer who did the assessment in Sarasota County. You know, he showed us that levee next to Laurel, is it Laurel Meadows? Basically, what is it?
Broke.
Yeah. It hadn't been inspected since 2018. Like, they even forgot that it needed to be inspected. It just looked good because there was so much tree coverage or something. I don't know. I don't understand. But the point is, like, just do the inspections on a regular basis by a certified engineer. So we're just repeating a lot of what Steve Swaw has recommended to the county. We've taken up those talking points, and now we're advocating them through our Voices of Water program. And so, again, if you go to our website and look at Voices for Water, you can find all these talking points. Oh yeah, so this is a video. So another way you can get involved, and I can skip through the video because I don't know how much time I've been talking, but I feel like it's been a lot.
Okay.
I still have 25 minutes, but I don't want to take up all that time. So I'm gonna just send these videos out later. You can watch them at home, but the point is this. Do you know how environmental enforcement happens? It doesn't happen unless someone tells, like literally, that's how it happens. There is no monitoring of environmental laws. Just the other day, I was at the beach and somebody was flying a drone, and I'm a licensed drone pilot, and my sister and brother-in-law were fighting over whether or not it was legal to fly a drone. I'm like, guys, it's absolutely not legal to fly a drone over people unless we were participating in their event. Like, it was a wedding and we hired them and everybody knew. But this wasn't a wedding, this was just Lido, and it was just a drone. But like, who's gonna enforce that law, right? Someone would have to tell in order for the person flying the drone to have any kind of repercussions for breaking the law. So that is in a nutshell how environmental laws work. We, like the county will tell you, you need to call environmental enforcement in order for us to even do anything. Like, if your neighbor's overwatering, is there someone driving around to see if someone's watering on the wrong day at the wrong time? No, there's not. So the only way that they can enforce that law is if you tell them. And that's how all environmental laws work, and that's why we developed a pollution reporting system called Eyes on the Suncoast. So we need your eyes to help us maintain high environmental quality. And the only way we can do that is if you report pollution. So we have a set of videos that show you what are we looking for and how to report it. And so I will send that out so that you can view those videos, and if you still happen to see something, you can tell us, because we'll follow up. Because you could also just go right to the enforcement agency, which is great, you could do both. The reason why we want you to come to us is because then we can have the data to advocate for stronger laws, or we can have the data to advocate for stronger enforcement, which we're doing in both cases regarding mangroves, because we're seeing a lot of mangrove destruction lately. Another way to get involved is to participate in our Mangrove Ranger program, which, because we've seen so much mangrove violations, one thing we want to do is be proactive, because I got a PhD in geography and love remote sensing. I figured, let's start a program where we use drones to monitor mangroves, and then we get two key metrics that go into an index of health. And I report on that index of health, and what we learned from our first year of doing it, which was 2024, was that mangroves that have been trimmed according to the law actually have lower health than a mangrove that was destroyed, like a mangrove forest that was destroyed by a exploding sewage pipe, like Long Bar. So there was an exploding sewage pipe that killed a bunch of mangroves, and when we put down our acre plot, we took about half of that dead mangrove area plus a non-dead mangrove area. That had a better index score for health than the area that has been recently trimmed. And the highest health was our reference site, which is what we hypothesized. And our reference site is an area of mangrove forest that is protected under a mitigation bank. So it's a protected area that had the highest score, and then the two lowest scores happen to be the one area that was recently trimmed to 6 feet from originally 24 feet, so that was also really sad. And they violated the law when they were trimming, so that could have had something to do with it. And they were fined $8,000, which is not enough for a very large development. But also, all these things, we're collecting all this information and data so we can make it known, but also advocate for stronger laws. We now have a law student who's working to figure out our path forward legally for creating a stricter mangrove law. So he's looking at how Sarasota County might be better than Manatee County when it comes to protecting mangroves, because Sarasota County has its own delegated authority to monitor and enforce the state law, where Manatee County doesn't have that authority. Oh, I forgot to show you the great pictures. So that's our first group of mangrove rangers. We had 20 volunteers. We need boat operators. We need licensed drone pilots. We need people that are not a boat operator or a licensed drone pilot, just enthusiasts. And we go out in the water once between May 6th and June 6th to monitor a group of mangroves in Sarasota Bay. And I just want to thank my funders. Suncoast Waterkeeper is generously funded by the Moat Scientific Foundation, which is not affiliated with Moat Aquarium. Also, Mary and Charles Forensic Foundation, and we get to keep our boat for free at Bahia Mar West Marina, which is really, really great, so we're very thankful for them. And then we have members who are our Manatee members. Those are our largest contributors, so they donate $1,200 a year, and without all of this funding, we couldn't do all the work that I just got done telling you about. So I will take any questions that you may have. But before you have questions, let me recap the ways that you can get involved. One, you can help with the advocacy through Voices for Water. So you go to our website and go to Voices for Water. Two, you can report pollution through our Eyes on the Suncoast program. I'm going to send those videos. Three, you can become a mangrove ranger. And four, don't forget, you can just email me and let me know where we should be monitoring in your area where people like to recreate. So those are 4 ways you can easily get involved. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, your slide that showed 3 years of microalgae and various waterways, and I wanted you to comment, if you would, just on Roberts Bay. That's sort of our little local waterway. And is there anything concerning there in those numbers, spring and summer? What would you say about those numbers?
It's not the same Roberts Bay.
That's an,
Yeah,
That's Roberts
so-
Bay in
Roberts Bay, I
Sarasota,
don't
not
think
Roberts
so.
Bay in
Roberts Bay.
Venice, Nokomis.
I don't think our Roberts Bay is on there.
No.
I thought I saw Roberts.
no, it's in the
Yeah, but
middle.
that's Roberts Bay, Sarasota.
So there's North Roberts Bay, and then there's Roberts and Donna Bay, and I'm pretty sure those
That's
are
not
two
the
different
same.
kind of bay areas. And this one, you can see it pointing on the inset map to where Philippi Creek is discharged into the bay. That's North Roberts Bay, and that's what they're talking about.
Okay.
So not your bay down here. And the reason why that was so large was because of those unabated
Well,
sewage
first,
spills.
thank you for what you do.
Mhm.
Thank you for being here. Thank you to League of Women's Voters for having you here. And I'll try one more parochial question
Okay.
of specific interest to me. You had some discussion there of wastewater and its effects.
Mhm.
And it's my understanding that Venice puts no effluent back in area waters.
No,
It
they
recycles
reclaim
everything.
water,
Is that your
yep.
understanding, and are we good in that area?
Yeah, from what I understand, it's 100% reclaimed water. So that's really great. And I don't know the city of Venice. I don't know enough about the city's wastewater to say anything about it. All I know is about the county's wastewater